complete joy. And I got to do my first rant. Firstly, I always say, thank you so much, David, for your work. I know we shouldn't need to hear that. I've been watching you for 30 years nearly. I came to see you years ago in Bath. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being you, honestly, for doing all your work for people who haven't been born yet. You've devoted your life to this stuff. Thank you so much. We're going to be talking about David's film, The Renegade, which I'm really excited to see. Can't wait for that. Because, of course, we're all dissidents, and renegade is a lovely word, actually. I'll say the meaning of that. So, David, I'll start with a quick rant, as I usually do. Is that okay? Just a quick rant?
Oh, yeah. Please feel free, Jason.
It's like, feel free, Jason. I've been talking all week. You carry on, for God's sake. You must be exhausted, David. I see what you're doing, and it's just unbelievable. And just to say that, ladies and gentlemen, if you're talking about this kind of thing we heard exactly at the right time, you're on the planet exactly at the right time as the curtain goes up on these people who evilly run this world for so long. I'll have a little rant. I want to say something, a couple of things first before David, unleash David on you. I was thinking of David tonight. I thought about the old Star Trek movies. There was one called The Cage, which was wonderful. And they had Spock and Captain Kirk in a cage. It was that one with the big heads. They were the evil cabal, if that sounds familiar. And it got to the stage where even what they thought, if they thought bad feelings towards these beings, these evil beings, the collar used to choke on their necks. That's where we are. We'll expound on that in a minute, me and David. And I've just written a few more. As more and more people awaken, it has to show itself, you see. This is where we are now. The people who are controlling the planet at the detriment of humanity, it's slavery. Let's make no mistake. Mark Passio, I love that guy. He says it as it is. Shocking to listen to. Government is slavery. That's the end of it, right? So there's a molasses slowness between when something is done, a bad thing, and when it's exposed. That molasses slowness is the gap is closing now from when things are done and the spotlight comes on them. And thanks to people like David Icke, because he's been exposing this for years and years and years and years and years. And finally, the time lag is closing between the two things. We at AV10, there was a lady called Georgia Poliquin, hoping to get on the show with Ian Crane and Dr. Graham Down up there. She's come across here, David, from the Yellow Vest movement now. She's a lawyer, great lady. And she's been saying, she's spoke at the AV10 on Ian Crane's page. You can go and see that. She's saying you can hardly have a conversation now. It's being shut down. Like Nazi Germany, let's be dead honest about it. This is what we're talking about. And Paul Craig Roberts, I was speaking to him about it, and he was saying people still let them hit them with the truncheons, and there should have been 2,000 people outside Assange's Ecuadorian embassy to help him. And we can see it as just one quick more thing. We can see it, David. The government were there. Hooray, at last. But it's daunting. The governments are collapsing. Each government's collapsing. The politics is collapsing. You can see it now. It's a Frankenstein's monster. Government and politics, it's dying at last because it's been built on fear and slavery. And someone once said, it was a wonderful Eustace Mullins said, David, he said it's like changing the baby's the safety pin on a baby's nappy and leaving the shitty nappy there. The same thing, you just change the shiny face and it's still the same pooey nappy, right? So the Frankenstein's monster is finally collapsing. It's showing its hand. It's trying to close everyone down as we expose it, and we must not resuscitate a dying Frankenstein's monster, David, must we? Because it's killing us spiritually and physically. Just one last thing. I reckon if a spiritual coroner came down here now, David, he would pronounce most people spiritually almost dead now, because fear is paralytic to consciousness development and humanity blossoming. The fear has choked people so long, but at last there's a smelling salt. David, and thanks to people like you, I'm very excited, thanks to people like you for your tremendous work again and again and again, getting up there in front of people, getting up there in front of people. So I want to say to you what I said to Barry Trower the other night, and thanks for your support for that show, David. I said to Barry Trower before we started, I'll say it to you, and that'll be me, my rant over. David, I'm even sorry that I've apologized to you that you've still got to do your work. I know that's why you're on the planet, clearly. But I'm sorry you've still got to talk about this stuff to people. But the crowds are gathering, the revolution's here, and people are waking up all over. And thanks for your film. We'll talk about your film, right? David, that's me done. Thank you for being you.
Well, that's very kind. I would just say one thing. Whenever you're in a state of flux, you have to be very careful about where you go.
Right.
Once the state of flux has brought an end to the status quo,
Good point.
it can seem a good thing if the status quo is not very nice. But the question is, where do you go from here? See,
Right.
what we've seen with so many so-called revolutions is that the people are told it's a people's revolution. And then the revolution brings about a state of flux.
Yep.
And after the state of flux, the people that were in control, or the force would be in control, different personalities, same force, that was in control before is in control again. So we have to be very careful. And I would say this on that point, that the plan is to. I've just finished another book actually, which to say it's controversial is like saying you need a coat in the Antarctic, really. It's seriously controversial. And if people think I've been demonized up to this point, well, just hang around a bit. But I mentioned in that book this agenda, which is for the post-democratic society. Now, in this state of flux, we either go into the truly free society, or we allow ourselves to go into the post-democratic society, using their own term. And that is when, instead of having elections, you have experts and appointed people running everything, because the politicians are useless, you can't trust them. And I do see a systematic demonization of politics, which is ever so easy because it's full of crooks, but a demonization of politics to turn the people against, if you like, even in the way that we do it now, the alleged chosen form of government into an appointed government. And that's what we've really got to watch for. It's great that that people are now seeing the system for what it is. They're reassessing what life is, what reality is, what's happening in the world. It's really fantastic. But we just got to be careful that at this point, at this cusp, this state of flux that's now beginning to emerge, that we don't get railroaded and corralled down another cul-de-sac to another form of tyranny, which in terms of appointed, quote, leaders would be actually a worse tyranny than we've had up to this point. So it's really a fork in the road, and we've got to be very, very streetwise about where we go from here.
Oh, brilliantly said, David. I'm so glad you said that, because I'm speaking to a lot of people now who are feeling that very deeply. I speak to people here at the studio every day. It's very interesting. And they're saying, what do we do then, And I think because it's becoming glaringly obvious that the cage has been so brilliantly designed and built, and you explain it in all your books fantastically. And if someone was to say to me, what do I do now? I would say, well, understand the prison firstly, like Gurdjieff said, or you'll never get out. You've got to understand how it's built and how it's designed. Read David's books. Keep reading David's books. Listen to what you're saying. And, so it's brilliantly done. And we've been rendered virtually helpless. So people are tired, David. They're exhausted, and they're telling me their symptoms now. I feel terrible. And I said earlier, if you feel normal, you'd have to worry about yourself. You shouldn't feel normal. You should feel terrible. You should, because of that. So yeah, exactly. And like you've said, what is it? What's the name? Something I forgot. What is the Hegelian dialect? Create the problem. There's a reaction and then the solution. You've said it about that for years, and people are like that, and that's what they will do very easily. You clap over here, all the sheep run over here. You clap over there, all the sheep run over here. But as the sheep are being herded now, David, there's people shouting, "No, we don't want to! Whoa, 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 whoa! We're not going. We're not going." So my question to you is, and I know everyone will be on their lips, David, what do we do? It's very, very tricky to know what to do now, isn't it, David? What I mean, obviously say no, if you, but talk about that a bit,
Well, first of all, it's a point I was making in an interview earlier this week. I see the so-called spiritual and quote New Age arena saying that you shouldn't talk about this stuff because it's negative, and they talk about we need to be positive. Well, how are you going to be positive in terms of making any difference if you don't understand how your imprisonment works and how it's done and how you're being psychologically manipulated, to understand how it works and how the manipulation works is the most positive thing that you can do, really, because once you understand the game, you can start playing it to win. Once you realize there is a game and how it's played, then you are empowered to do something about it. When you don't realize there's a game and you think it's all random, then what are you going to do about it? Because you don't think there's anything wrong. Therefore, what do I do? Why do I do anything about something I don't even see I need to do anything about? So seeing the problem is absolutely vital. And the bottom line, the foundation of this conspiracy, on which every other element of it is founded, is control of human perception. That's the stadium. Everything comes from that. Because human perception dictates human behavior. A perception of a situation dictates how you respond to it, whether you respond to it at all, whether you challenge something or whether you support it. All comes from perception. So control of perception is the stadium. And then you ask the question, where does perception come from? Well, it comes from information. And so we're now seeing this attempt ever more blatantly to completely control the information that people receive. What's been happening, what this awakening is, people call the awakening, it's not an awakening to something. It's not an awakening to enlightenment, because our natural state is one of enlightenment. The awakening is to awaken from the program. To awaken from what? What is the program? It's a perception program. You come out of the womb, and before you enter the earth at the other end, you go through a lifelong process of perceptual programming. This is what it is. This is what the education system is. It's not education at all. It's a programming perceptual download. The media is confirming that. Peer pressure is confirming that. Everything's confirming that. Because the idea is to put people in a perceptual state at the start of their lives, and a very narrow perceptual state that I call the postage stamp consensus, and then keep them in it for the rest of their lives. Because while you have your perceptions controlled, your behavior's controlled. And what we're seeing now as this awakening from the program progresses in more and more people, is the blatant effort, ever more extreme, to shut down sources of information that lead people to question the program. That's what it's about. They talk about fake news. It's not fake news. If you want to shut people down because of fake news, the BBC will be off the air. So would CNN and NBC. It's not about fake news. Fake news is how they work, lying to people. It's that which will give people the opportunity through information to question the program that enslaves them. And people are enslaved by their perceptions. You look at any fierce, rigid belief system, whether it's a Muslim belief system, a Jewish belief system, a Christian belief system, you look at where it came from. What do most children of Muslim families become? They become Muslims. Most children of Jewish families become followers of Judaism. People brought up in Christian families, especially the southern states of America type Christian families, invariably become Christian. Now, that tells you something. It tells you that their belief system is not about scanning the potential of perceptual states to see which one suits you. It's a download. And when I'm talking about religions and children inheriting religious beliefs from their parents, I'm just talking about a really obvious, blatant example of the programming download in general. So why do the children of a certain religion become that religion invariably? Because it's all they've ever heard. And they've been hearing it their entire formative years. Now you take that basic process in relation to religion and you apply it to the world in general. When you enter the world, you are influenced immediately by the perceptions of your parents that pass those perceptions on to you. And then you very quickly, so ludicrously quickly, go into the education system, or what bravely calls itself education, and you get the system's version of everything all your formative years. And if you rebel against what you're being told, then you're a disruptive influence in the classroom. We better get the the Ritalin out or something. And it's a pressure all the time, carrot and stick, to conform to the program. And the program is a perceptual state. It's a perceptual belief system. And not only is it about what you believe, it's also about limiting people's sense of the possible. This is something that's lost. And it's so vital to keeping people in perceptual servitude. The perception of the possible. Now, this is why the nature of reality and the illusory nature of physical reality is not discussed almost anywhere in the mainstream, certainly not in education, because once you realize the malleable, illusory nature of physical reality, i.e. physical reality doesn't exist, it's a holographic energetic field, which we decode into what appears and we experience as solidity. Once you start to realize that, then your sense of the possible starts to expand. Because if this world is just solid and physical in the way we experience it, then what that means is almost everything is impossible. But when you realize it's not, and actually it's changeable by consciousness, changes in consciousness, changes in perception, can change, literally impact upon the world. Just like the computer can interact with the internet. The internet can affect the computer, but the computer, by what it posts on the internet, can affect the internet. It's a two-way thing. And therefore, we can affect the world purely from our perceptual states. But if you don't know that that's possible, and you think everything is just random and it's all solid and everything's apart from everything else, then and basically the world of the five senses as we experience it is all there is, then everything seems impossible. What can I do? I'm just little me. I've got no power. And so they want to keep us in this illusion, first of all, that the world is one of solidity, and what we experience it as is actually how it is. Well, it isn't. So you have to keep this true nature of reality away from people, so they don't understand this. This is why you look at mainstream science. Even though you've got quantum physics, which is going into these deep levels of energy and illusory nature of reality, the rest of science just carries on as if quantum physics doesn't exist. And so you have, I was watching this guy, very briefly I would say, this guy Cox, this BBC science bloke, who is absolutely clueless about the nature of reality, doesn't know what he's talking about, but he's giving the usual, everything is solid, and what it appears to be is how it is, kind of script on the BBC the other night. And if you can control this very perception of reality, thus the perception of possibility, then you hold people in a perceptual prison in which they will wave away in dismissal the truth of what's happening, simply because they can't perceive that the truth of what's happening is possible. Give you a very quick example. Shape-shifting. If the world is solid, then shape-shifting, something moving from one form to another, is impossible. Of course it is. And people dismiss the idea that shape-shifting is possible because they believe in a solid world. And so understandably they say, well, that's ridiculous, that's not possible, you can't do that. Well, no, you can't if the world's solid, but it ain't. It's an illusion. It's a illusory solid. It's like a Wi-Fi field of information. Our bodies are like Wi-Fi fields of information. And if you have Wi-Fi and you say to someone in this space that you're standing in is a global reality which anyone can tap into, and if you get something called a computer, you can bring that information onto the screen in a completely different form to the Wi-Fi field of radiation information that is that you're decoding. If they don't know about computers and they don't know about Wi-Fi, they'd say you're absolutely bonkers. It's impossible. First of all, they'd say, well, where is this field of information? I can't see it. Well, you can't see Wi-Fi either. But because people know it exists, they accept that it exists even though they can't see it. And what the computer does is take information on the basis of how it's encoded from that Wi-Fi field, and it puts it on the screen in a completely different form. And that's what we're doing. The base form of this reality, like the base form of the body, the base form of everything, is waveform information fields, like Wi-Fi. And what we're doing is decoding that Wi-Fi through to the electrical state through the five senses. What are the five senses doing? They're taking waveform information. I mean, the ears are a classic with sound waves. They're turning it into electrical information, and they are communicating it to the brain in that form, and the brain then decodes that into digital holographic information on our screen in here, and we decode it and experience it as the world that appears to be outside of us, but actually isn't. It's in here. And therefore, the world revolves around our perceptual states, because our perceptual states are dictating how this world is decoded, so therefore what we experience. Your perceptions dictate your frequency. They dictate the range of frequency you're operating on. That range of frequency interacts with this cosmic quantum Wi-Fi field of information, possibility and probability. And you then, through that feedback loop, manifest on your screen an expression of that reality which reflects your perceptions. For instance, if you believe you are little me and you have no power, and what can I do? Then that self-identity of powerlessness, of limitedness, will dictate the frequency you're operating on. It will dictate the range of frequency you're operating on. So you're now interacting with this cosmic field of possibility and probability, this information field, at that level. And if that's what you're doing, then the feedback loop is going to manifest a life experience in line with your perceptions. You're going to live a little me life. And your life is going to be predictable. Nothing different is going to happen. It's going to be just one day's like another day. Not because it has to be, but because your perceptions are dictating it. But if you self-identify from another point of view, this is the way out of here. To stop identifying with the labels, the little me labels, the I am R's, whether it's I am a man, I am a woman, I am a black, I am a white, I am Muslim, I am a Jewish, whatever. Let the labels go and see the labels for what they are, which is simply an experience. It's a name for an experience, that's all it is. And you self-identify with being the consciousness, the awareness that's having the experience. You know, I'm sitting here now, and people would look at this body and they'll say, yeah, that's David Icke. David Icke is the label of my experience that I'm having. who I am is not that experience, but the awareness that's having the experience. And when you start to self-identify with that level of I, the infinite, eternal, potentially limitless I, then that expansion of self-identity becomes an expansion of consciousness, and you start to interact with a cosmic field of possibility and probability in a much more expanded way and a much higher level of frequency. Now that feedback loop is manifesting a very different set of experiences to little me, I have no power. It's a life where you can take your power back, where you can turn life into an adventure instead of something to endure and survive. You can start impacting upon the world instead of having the world impact upon you. You start living life instead of life living you, which is what the program does. And therefore, from this transformation of self-identity, the more that you allow yourself not just to intellectually perceive yourself or call yourself infinite awareness, but to live that that's what you are, to look at this cabal of apparent power and omnipotence and see it as a little boy in short trousers, because you're aware of your power and your potential to manifest your reality, irrespective of their manipulation, then you start taking this power back. If you focus and believe in only a physical world with the limitations of physicality, then I completely understand why people say, nothing you can do, mate. You know, what can you do? It's just too much. You can't stop it. Well, you can't from a physical point of view, because there is no physical. It does help if it exists, if you're going to stop something. But if you go into this other level where consciousness, the power of your awareness, the power of your ability to manifest experience that you choose instead of it choosing you, then you can start to impact upon the world. And much as they may try to stop you, they can't, because you have manifested your reality. You are manifesting your reality. You're not letting their reality in. That's what happens when you buy the program. You're letting their reality in. So they're dictating your reality because you're accepting their reality. When you don't, and you come from a completely different level of self-identity, then you are manifesting your experience. You're manifesting your world. You're not manifesting theirs. This is the level that this whole house of cards, because that's what it is, it's based on ignorance and keeping information from people. That's the level that this house of cards will come down. And if I was sitting here and the world was solid and all these limitations were real, I would say, we got no chance, Jason. Forget it. Go and enjoy the rest of your life. Waste of time. But because it's not, then we can bring this down when we understand what it is and therefore how to bring it down. And it's not in the world of the seen, it's the world of the unseen that the house of cards will fall.
Magnificent. Thank you so much, David. Great words. Thank you. Fantastic. I'm so glad you're here and I'm talking to you. And I'll just resonate with a little bit of that. Someone said to me this morning when you were talking about, we must look at everything negative. You know, she'll be probably be listening to this, so I just want to tell her I love you. So it's fine. It's not. I'm not having a go at you. I'm just using that as an example of what you said to me this morning when I was talking about this. I said we got David on tonight. Blah blah blah. Later, I got Satish Kumar and other people. Actually, Satish was talking to Dawkins about this kind of thing, and he just kept saying, "Well, you're not. You know, things like you're not even solid. You know, you don't understand what we're talking about, really." But
no,
I suppose this lady's
I
going.
would just say one thing, Jason.
Go on. Yep.
You say your friends are going to be watching.
Yeah.
If you were being manipulated, right?
Yeah.
Someone was manipulating you, and you didn't know.
Yeah.
And they were manipulating you in a way that was really detrimental to you, your happiness, your freedom. Would it be positive for me to say, I'm not going to tell him. I don't want to frighten him. I'm not going to tell him because he'll be upset. Or is it positive to tell you how you're being manipulated so you can stop being manipulated? You know, this perception of positive really does need to go through a maturity processor. So we start to see it in a different way. Bringing what has been hidden, what has been manipulating us from the hidden all this time to the surface is the ultimate in positivity. And I do find in this whole kind of what people call the spiritual arena, and I'm into all that, but with my feet on the ground. And so when I observe them, I see them saying, you mustn't say that, it's negative. First of all, these are people that go around saying we must let go of fear. And then they say, oh, don't say that, it'll frighten people. And I'm thinking, well, I thought letting go of fear was what you're talking about. So, you know, don't talk about it, just live it. And if you observe this whole don't talk about it, that's negative, what it is they are seeking to escape from reality, seeking to escape from what's actually happening simply by not talking about it. It is the spiritual equivalent of don't talk about it, I don't want to talk about it, just, you know, change the subject. And that is just an expression of fear, something they don't want to face. And what you don't face will eventually consume you, and that's what's been happening. But the great news is there are increasingly vast numbers of people who are willing to look this in the eye. And it's the only way we're going to bring it to an end is by understanding that it's happening and how it's happening and its techniques of manipulation.
Bloody well said, David. I'm glad you mentioned that because the lady said to me this morning, oh yeah, but what you resist persists. You know, I said, but what you don't resist persists. Look, and I gave her a radical example. I said, if there's someone over there trying to sodomize a little child, what do you think I'm going to stand here and not resist it? Yeah? How about what you don't resist persists? But I love what you said, just resonating with you about the religion thing. You can teach any kid that any religion. And one of the reasons that is, I will say, is that because religion is experiential. Now, you're the right guy to speak about that. You, like me, got knocked on your back 30 years ago, 20, whatever, and you had a real experience, religare, religion, to religament, to retie. And don't get me wrong, you know, the Bibles, the Qurans, everything, they're a good map that can bring you back towards yourself, but actually you can get stuck in that map because they're just the words, just the theology, the intellectual overlay. Real religion is experiential. So most people who are espousing religion and bringing their kids upon it have never had a religious experience. And if they did, they'd probably throw the books away. And I will go as far as to say, if any of the great masters were here now, if they existed, I would say they'd say burn the whole lot. Let's start having experience, you know. And I want to just move into this after saying that. As, again, like you said about feeling, you know, I talk a lot about feeling now, David, about the importance of feeling how you feel, because if you understand the situation, like you said, you've got to understand it to escape it. Understanding it is not depressing anymore. I've got to tell everybody that. It might seem so initially and negative and oh my gosh, it's going to depress me. No, actually what it does when you understand how the system works and how you've been manipulated and how you've been programmed and conditioned and browbeaten and raised with fear, it actually releases you because you realize and understand why you felt depressed and vaguely melancholy all your life. So it lets you off the hook. It's like, well, my God, of course I felt terrible. And I want to just brush this past you. Well, but victim and created, of course. I think we're at a very important crossroads now because I ate, slept, drank Eckhart Tolle and those. I love Eckhart Tolle, don't get me wrong, years ago. I want you to mention that something about this, David. I feel we're at a confluence now. My work, I feel, it's no good talking about how to patch yourself up and become whole and present again and find that thing inside yourself if suddenly you go back out into this mental asylum and you're living in fear again and the system is battering you again and you lose it again. So you've got to understand people like Icke told, don't talk about the darkness, and the people who talk about the darkness and the politics don't talk about re-establishing peace within yourself. And that's why I like you so much, because you do both. And I feel we're at a confluence now. And also, I want to mention about what you said to clarify that as well. But like you said, when you see lightning going through the sky, it's not random at all. It takes the path of least resistance. So it is not strong to be really spiritual and loving and love unconditionally all the time. A great mentor of mine said, appropriately presented love in each different given situation is the wise way. Sometimes you've got to show your bloody teeth and say, I'm pissed off with this, and it's got to damn change, right, David? And that's why we'll go on to your film in a minute, Renegade, and you're talking about that in your film. And I loved when you said about the table is not solid, because people come in here and they say to me, oh yeah, you got David Icke on the show, he talks about, things that aren't. I said, well, hang on a minute, what are you if you're not an alien? You're on this planet going in space faster than the speed of sound. You're not even solid under a microscope. What are you? Let's open our minds a little here, But just a quick word about that, Dave, and then we'll have a chat about your lovely, amazing film, which I can't wait to see.
Well, when you're quoting people, you're quoting the program. They're just parroting the program.
Yeah.
And I mean, just as an example, let's just use religion as an example again. According to mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum is 0.005% of what exists in the universe. Visible light, which is the only frequency band that we can actually see, everything you see is within that band of frequency, otherwise we can't see it, is a fraction of the 0.005%. So if you look at religion, what it's saying is that all you need to know to live your life in the proper way and believe the right things is between the covers of a single book within a smear of 0.005% of the universe. Planet Earth, equivalent to the projected size of the universe, is equivalent to a billionth of a pinhead. So all you need to know is between the covers of one book, within a smear of 0.005% of the universe on a planet the size of a pinhead. It's madness. Of course it is. And what is it about? Focus. It's about hijacking perception. That's what religion's there for. That's what it was always there for. Hijacking perception. You have to believe this narrow band of possibility, and you have to follow a deity alleged to be have arrived, thousands of years ago, or in the 6th century or whatever with Islam, even further back with Judaism. You have to follow this deity. And this book, written by who knows when, in who knows what circumstances, which has been manipulated and changed over the years to suit the authorities of the day. And that's all you need to know. It's crazy. There is infinity of possibility out there. What are you doing? But what it does is it focuses perception on an extraordinarily small range of possibility. And if you want to start to explore beyond it, you are a blasphemer. You're not. Oh, what will the Pope say? What will the Imam say? What will the rabbi say? You know what? I couldn't care bloody less. I couldn't care less. Let them say what they like. I am me. I am not them. If they want to believe what they believe, fair enough. Don't impose it on me, because I'm not having it. And if people started to live their lives like that, then these impositions of perception, thus impositions of behavior, impositions of opinion increasingly, would have nowhere to go. They couldn't operate. They operate through acquiescence. And what we're seeing now is increasing examples among those who are falling further and further into fear of the most insidious form of censorship of all, which is self-censorship. People just not saying it because they fear the consequences. Well, people will see when this new book comes out in September that I choose not to fear the consequences of having my of having my right to an opinion. And you know, if there's 7.7 billion people in human society, they can't be controlled by a handful of people unless they acquiesce to the impositions of the handful of people. We need to stop doing it. I mean, who are they? Who are they to impose their will upon us? Not having it. You want to say I'm this or say I'm that? Well, feel free. I can care less. Because once you let go of the fear of what other people think of you, of what other people say about you, all those people lose power over you. Their power is not in what they say, and it's not in what they do to you. It's your response to it. You're this, you're that. Oh, thanks for sharing that with me. Have a nice day. Couldn't care less. And it's like, well, where do they go from there? Where do they go from there? When they're hurling their abuse, and you're saying, well, thank you very much, have a nice day, couldn't care less. Where do they go from there? They have no power over you. And that's why they do it, to have power over you. And this is why, I mean, I could weep sometimes. I'll be truthful with you. When I hear about kids committing suicide because of what's been said about them on social media by their so-called friends or mates or associates. Kids, don't fall for it. It doesn't matter what people say about you. It doesn't matter what people believe about you. What matters is what you believe about yourself, how you see yourself. Celebrate your uniqueness. Celebrate that you're not the same as anyone else. That's what we should be doing. We may be expressions of the same ultimate consciousness, but we are unique points of attention within that consciousness. So celebrating diversity, true diversity, not illusory, progressive, fascistic lack of diversity in the name of diversity, not all that rubbish, but real diversity, diversity of the way you see the world and the way you live your life, that should be celebrated. Don't let anyone tell you you're the this, that, or the other, because you don't conform to the madness that they've allowed themselves to be consumed by. Don't worry about it, kids. You know, I went through historic levels of ridicule.
Bloody well done, I know, God.
Well, it's affected me, isn't it? Oh, yeah. Oh, it really destroyed me. Because I didn't care what people thought of what I was saying or what I was doing. Because
in fact, David, you once said, I think on one of my shows, is that it was the best thing that ever happened to you when they laughed at you on Wogan, because you then fully could be you, because everyone was laughing at you anyway.
Yeah, well, that historic levels of ridicule was a gift, because it allowed me to let go of any concern with what people thought about me. And when you go through that, you either fall apart or you come out honed by the fire into steel. And so I say to kids, don't fall for it. Celebrate your uniqueness. And if people say unpleasant things about you, well, just laugh in their face and get on with your life. And you see them wither away when they see they have no power over you. Take your power back. Celebrate your uniqueness. Celebrate your unique view of life and the way you see life, instead of having it externally imposed by other people who then trot along like sheep in a flock following the shepherd. If people want to do that, let them do it. If they want to have a go at you because you won't do it, well, so what? Doesn't matter. They'll think something else tomorrow. I'll tell you that from my own experience. I have people coming up to me here on the Isle of Wight wanting to talk about this information that I knew years ago were right at the forefront of laughing at me in the street. So they'll think something else tomorrow. So don't worry about what they think now. Just get on with your life. And if people around you don't respect your right to be different, well, find some other people. There's lots of them around these days now, as more and more people start to celebrate uniqueness instead of scorning it. Don't fall for it, kids. Don't fall for it. Don't let it depress you. Let it empower you. Let it inspire you to say, I am me, and I'm going to be me, and I'm not going to be what you tell me I must be. And you will then lead rather than be a follower behind someone else.
Bloody well said. Bloody well said, David. Bravo to that. Well done. Go for it, kids. Be you in your uniqueness, every single one of you, you know. And just to quickly follow that on and say, you know, oh, I love that showman, that greatest showman. I am free. I am who I'm meant to be. This is me. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Get in there and you find that power again. Don't let it be dislocated, dismembered, severed. We've been severed from ourselves. We've been dislocated and dismembered purposely from our true power. And now is the time to get it back. There is a fork in the road, because we'll go on to 5G in a minute and stuff like that, and the net closing in on us. If you don't act now, you know, you've got a responsibility. You know, I'm quite brutal with people nowadays. It's like, well, sorry, I'm really sorry. If you're not acting and taking responsibility as one of the midwives on this planet, if you're in a human form, for a new birth which needs to be born now, or we're going to have a miscarriage, and guess what? You might not get another chance for a while. But on that, we'll come to that in a minute. I know we will. But I want to just say this, Dave, because it's been something I've been saying to people recently, which is from me. I didn't second get this from anybody, and it came to me one day, and it was not profound, but it's very important. Human beings have got a tremendous endurance for pain, David. You know that. And it's very highly commendable. It's placed in us purposely, like our ethical barometer and alarm bell is. It's a brilliantly placed thing inside us, a power which you've all got to endure, a tremendous endurance and a tremendous capacity for pain and suffering, right? And I'm harping on this for a good reason. It's brilliant. It gets us through tremendous struggle. It makes us climb mountains. It creates amazing things inside of us. But I'm telling you now, that has been manipulated, everybody. And that tremendous endurance and capacity for struggle is no longer serving us. It's good in an emergency, but people carry on doing the same old thing, David, and carry on doing the jobs they hate, and carry on being punished and hurt and manipulated by this government with fear and sort of a threat of violence if you dare step outside the box, like my show's called, you know. And to talk about the Bibles and everything, like you said, do you know what I'd say if a being came down here now, David? And this is a compliment, and it's the bloody truth. If someone said came down here now, and I'm not kissing your backside, because people on my show say stop kissing their asses. I'm not kissing their backsides. These people are heroes. David's a Martin Luther King, better, more than Martin Luther King. You'll all see in the future. If someone came and said to me, Jason, what do I do? How do I understand this planet? Tell me what to do. Do you know what I'd say? Get all David Icke's books. And I'm not joking. You want to understand the way this mesh is set up? Get David Icke's books, because it won't only just explain it to you, it'll empower you. And bloody well done, David, for staying the course. And I'm not kissing your backside. I'm telling you the truth. You've sometimes kept me going when I think about what you've done to keep me going. And I'm just beginning. I'm going to do all sorts of things and do much more speaking stuff. But let me tell you, thank you, David, for that. And I suppose that's the perfect segue into Renegade, isn't it? Renegade. Let me just read. I looked it up in the dictionary. Renegade. Where are we? Renegade. It comes. One of the meanings is it comes from the Greek word apostasy. Right? Apostasia. I'm Greek and I speak Greek. Defection, disaffiliation from abandonment, renunciation, embracing an opinion contrary to one's previous beliefs. Now, this is what it is now. It's like people are realizing, David, hang on. Something's wrong here. I don't feel right. And you're right not to feel right. Don't ever feel right about this situation we're in, because we've become used to slavery. We've become used to the global casino. It's asylum. It's an asylum. And if you felt right in this, you'd have to worry. People come in here, David, and they say, I'm depressed. I feel like I want to kill myself. I'll say, hey, guess what? That's exactly how you should feel, really, if you're really in touch with your spiritual self. You know, that's why you should feel like that. But, of course, don't stay there. We've got to move through that and understand why you feel like that. And that gives us a chance to transform and transmute it into something else. So, yeah. The film Renegade, David, what's going on? You've been blocked from a couple of places, I know. People are asking me, how do they go and see it? Where is it in London, and when's it coming out? I think it's the 4th, isn't it? And what happens? And my God, thank you for. I'll just put the poster up 1 second. There it is, Renegade, starring David Icke, and I love that thing you've got on there. Thank you, David, for making the film. It's a great achievement, and thank you so much for, again, being you and staying the course.
Well, I was approached by an American film company that wasn't out of support for what I'm doing. It just thought that I would make a good film in terms of my life. But the way it turned out is fantastic, really. Because, yes, it is a story about me and my life, but it is really a story about my work. And there is a phenomenal amount of information in it across the whole range of subjects. And of course, when you're dealing with feature film camera technology and special effects and stuff like that, then you can visually get things across in a way that is very easily accessible by people who are new to this information. And we've had various premieres, and I've been really encouraged by the reaction. People have been really blown away by it. And the most important thing for me is the number of times that people have said, I took my friend along to see it, who it doesn't know anything about this stuff. And it basically had a massive impact upon them because of the way the whole information's put together. And it's been edited. I didn't edit it. It was edited by the film company, but it's been edited in a way that makes the information really accessible and simple. And I am very hopeful that it's going to get a very large number of people to start to look at this information who weren't looking at it before. But of course, it's always a challenge because, as we were talking about at the start of the chat, the system doesn't want information like that out. And I had a premiere pulled in Los Angeles 5 minutes before we arrived at the theater. When the producer was asked if the film was about David Icke. Well, yes. Does it put him in a good light? Well, he comes across, well, yeah. Oh, we're not having it then, and those people will say, because it's against our values. We have values. Well, actually, you don't. And if you looked in the mirror and were honest with it, you'd realise you don't have any values. Because virtue signalling is a disease. It's not whether something's right or something's wrong. It's how do people perceive me if I do this. And the TUC, Trade Union Congress, pulled a premiere in London a few weeks ago. And they pulled it the day before, the afternoon before it was supposed to be shown. Jamie, my son, brilliantly found another venue. It was a devastatingly, almost hilarious email they sent. They said, we're not having this film being shown because we believe in inclusivity. And it was contained in an email where they're excluding me, So, I mean, it's madness because, again, the TUC, I mean, anybody remember when trade unions were about supporting freedom and working people? Well, if you do, you must be old and have a very good memory. And what was that? We're the TUC. We're not having this. We believe in inclusivity. How do you spell that? What is that? That's just virtue signalling. See, we're really nice people. We are the TUC. We don't have evil people like this David Icke. What do? You can get frustrated, or you can laugh in their face and go, idiot, move on, which is what I do. And so there are going to be challenges to try to stop the film circulating. But on June the 4th, it's just a few days from now, it will be available through davidicke.com, and how you can see it will be there. It has the potential to get to a lot of people. And
so it's not in a certain place, David.
No. You'll see it on the internet first.
Okay.
And then the film company and the distributor in America is working now and negotiating as they do with various media organisations to get it shown in the ways that movies are shown today at all the different so-called platforms. But you see, you always have David Icke. He's very controversial. Oh, really? That's terrible. I must conform, and then I'll be all right. or make a film that demonizes me, and then that won't be a problem at all. It could be shown anywhere. So the best first way to see it is through the internet on davidicke.com. All the details are there now. I mean, people can pre-order it, and then they'll get it on the 4th of June. But that's the best way to see it, and it will go wider, we hope, with the passage of time. And I've also just finished a book, like I said earlier.
Oh, and, I wanted to ask you about that. Yep.
Yeah. Well, if people think I've been controversial so far, and the establishment think I've been controversial so far, well, they've seen nothing yet. So it's going to be an interesting rest of the year, that's for sure, and beyond.
What's it called? Or did you say what it was called?
It's called The Trigger.
The Trigger, beautiful.
The Trigger, and when you read it, you'll see what I mean by the trigger. So that's going to be on pre-order from very early August, and more than any other book, the pre-orders are really important because I want this book circulating as widely as possible before it gets out into the wider world, shall we say, because what's going to happen after that, who knows? And you'll see what I mean when you read it.
Brilliant, David, brilliant. Well, David, we're running out of time as usual. We've got a few minutes left, so I'm going to try and squeeze one more nugget out of you, if you don't mind. We've got a few minutes left. Just a few. I can't let you go without asking you. Well, I want to say thanks to Alex Jones, firstly. I want to say thanks to Julian Assange, who's currently being murdered in prison and tortured. That's for sure. But I want to ask you what you think, and I know you're a bit like, we're political atheists, I know, like Gerald Salente, but I want to ask you about the crumbling government now, just your quick opinion about that. Before we go, crumbling government, Farage is stepping in. He's only been there 6 weeks. Everyone's jumping over to him because, as I said, it's like changing a baby's nappy, the pin on it, and leaving the shitty nappy. Whoever you vote for makes no bloody difference. It's the same slavery tomorrow, same system. So, but it's hopeful that people are changing. But your prediction, you the EU and Farage. Dare I ask you about Farage? I don't know, but I'm sure you'll tell me what you think's happening now with the government and what you think's going to happen with Boris and all these people. Just a quick one.
Well, it's about not having allegiances, but picking out circumstances and picking out situations and responding to them, from the point of view of the situation, and not from political allegiance, because people say I'm a this and I'm a that, and therefore everything this party says is right and everything that party says is wrong, or vice versa. Then you're in another program. It's about listening to what people say with every individual sentence, and saying that what you feel about that. I agree with that, but no, I don't agree with that. Instead of having this allegiance where it's all or nothing. And so when I look at someone like Nigel Farage, there are many things about Farage that I would not support and I don't agree with. I don't agree with the support for Trump, for a start. But without Farage, there would be no Brexit referendum. And without Farage, there wouldn't have been, in this recent European Union election, a vehicle for people to express their disgust at the way that the referendum result has been basically ignored and abused. The European Union is designed to absorb more and more countries, to be a centralized state dictated by unelected people. The plan was never to let countries go, especially countries like Britain. So as I put on the internet within an hour of the referendum result coming out, sitting here in the early morning when the result was announced, this is just the start, because the political class ain't going to go quietly, and they haven't. And once they got control of the decision, basically through Parliament, then we were never going to have a Brexit that was going to be the one that people envisaged when they voted for it. It was going to be a Brexit that either didn't happen or was so weak we were still under the control of the European Union. Hence, that's Theresa May's, quote, deal. And, my son Gareth has had a wonderful analogy of what happened, because the Labour Party, I mean, Jeremy Corbyn talked like a radical and acts like an establishment figure, unfortunately, as many of his former supporters are beginning to understand and observe. And when the Labour Party, in league with others in Parliament, stopped any possibility of a no-deal Brexit, they basically handed all the aces to the European Union. And as my son Gareth said, if you go into a car showroom and you say to the salesman or whoever, I'm not leaving your showroom without buying a car, what kind of deal are you going to get? Because they know they can't lose now, because you're not leaving without buying a car, so we'll just get you to pay as much as we can to buy the car. You go into the same showroom and you say, well, I'm just come in, see what you can offer me. And, if you can't offer me something that's acceptable to me, I'm out of here. I'll go and look somewhere else. Then that salesman's going to work as hard as he can to find a price that is acceptable to you, because there's a good chance you're going to lose the sale. So once the no deal Brexit was taken off the table, you were in the situation of that first example. You were saying to the European Union, we're not leaving without a deal. So the European Union can't lose. That's how they give you as bad a deal as we can then, because you're not going to leave without one. And so all the way through, because of that, all the negotiations have been ridiculous. They've just been rigged. It needed someone to say, well, we will leave without a deal if you don't give us a good one. And in the end, if you're getting close to no deal, the big corporations of Europe that make a fortune out of Britain are going to be having the dark suits against the wall and the lapels saying, sort it. But that was never going to happen once the no deal was off the table. So the political class, certainly the more devious ones, would have known that. And they wanted that in straight away, because that meant there was going to be no real Brexit. But where we are now, and it's an interesting thing, when you look at the parties that got hammered at this EU election, the Conservatives and the Labour Party, they were the ones playing politics over Brexit, that were prevaricating. And people like Jeremy Corbyn, who all his political career has been against the European Union, becomes leader of the Labour Party, and suddenly he's more and more in favour of it, purely through politics. And people are starting to suss this. I mean, you've got the Liberal Democrats who benefited from this, from the Remain side, because they openly said, we are against Brexit, we want to stop it. In other words, we don't care what the people vote, we only care about what we want. But they were a way for Remain people to make their voices heard. That's why they did better than they ever would if they were just voting in an election. Same with the Greens. They benefited from that, because they also don't care about what people vote for. They only care about what they want. But the two parties that failed the most were the ones that prevaricated, the ones playing politics over Brexit. And the one that gained the most, of course, was a very simple vote, saying, by voting for the Brexit Party, we want to get out of the European Union, so sort it. And that's why they did so well. And, they're talking about this second referendum because they want a people's vote, Because the first one, which was a record turnout and 17.4 million people, that wasn't a people's vote, No. The second referendum is the people's vote. That's when we get the result we want. It's a joke. But that support for the Brexit Party would have thrown a spanner in their works, because they would now be thinking, well, if we had a second referendum, maybe we wouldn't win it. So it's all in a state of flux at the moment. All balls are in the air. You look at the people standing for the Tory leadership, and you look at the people standing for the Democratic presidency nomination, and it's such a rabble. I mean, there's no talent in there at all, apart from Tulsi Gabbard with the Democratic Party, who's vehemently against wars in the Middle East. The rest of them are just a rabble. And you know, you look at people like Boris Johnson, he wants to be Prime Minister. I mean, that's it. However way he becomes Prime Minister, it's the position he wants, not the ability to do anything. He wants the position. And that's what he's been after all along. So he'll do what it takes to get that position. And if that means supporting Brexit, he'll support Brexit. If it means prevaricating on Brexit, he'll prevaricate. So we're in a big state of flux here. But what's great is that what's been put into the face of the British people is, you know, people say, you never believe what you believe in the newspapers. And then people go ahead and do it. And they say, oh, you can't believe politicians. But they go ahead and do it. What this has been is a reminder, a massive reminder, this whole Brexit mess, debacle, that has said, look, it's real. They don't care about what you think. They don't care about what you want. They only care about what they want. And that's been a real a positive thing, I think, in getting people to realize that actually, yeah, politicians don't care about what we want. They don't care about what they call democracy, and the public will. And that's a good thing, because it will make people even more questioning and cynical about what they're told by politicians from here on in, and that's always a good thing.
Thanks, David. Thanks so much, and thanks for just telling us that before you go, because it rounded the interview off and the chat very, very nicely. So, David, thanks, David, for being you. To get the Renegade, go onto David's website, get that, and don't forget, get the book. Sign up for the book Trigger. Can't wait for that. Like you said, go on.
You'll read that with a tin hat on. or rather, no, because you don't need one.
Brilliant. So the smelling salts is there. As you said, this last thing with the government has shown what they are. It's shown that it's just a big farce, which is brilliant. Great smelling salts. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for clarity. It's a time to re-establish power and spirit. Stop drinking so much. Go inward, not outward. You know, pull your power back in, as David says, you know. And again, David, before you go, I just want to say thank you so much. I know I keep saying it, for being you. You'll be remembered as just one of the amazing smelling salts in this world, and this, you know, for people who haven't been born and everything. And I honor you. I love you and honor you, and I love your work for being you. And thank you so much for coming on this show, you know.
Pleasure, mate. Always a pleasure. Have a good one.